believe it's just of what's going on with the debt. And we're going to talk about this right now. Patty, right now, the tax revenue that's coming in is $4.6 trillion. $4.6 trillion. Yeah, what's $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there? Just ask our government, 5 trillion here, and we're at $34 trillion of debt right now. Well, what does that mean? That means that if we've got tax revenue of what did I say, 4.6, but we are actually have what's called your constant expenses that don't go away. All right, without going into the deep dive, what happens is we are upside down $3 trillion. Okay. And that includes the debt on the interest. So we're actually upside down $500 billion. But with all of the numbers and with the compounded interest and everything, we are digging a $3 trillion hole. Now, if you and I ran our books like this, there's a place called Leavenworth or someplace, or wherever. The point is, this is what's going on. And I mentioned this at the seminar. I said, when have you ever been in a situation where you loan money to the government, and for the benevolence that you show the government charges interest on the money we loan them. So in other words, they make us pay interest for them on the money that we loan them. So it's very important to understand what's going on, folks. It is very important to understand what's going on. So you've got to really be aware of what's going on with the debt, folks. It's insane. And so if you don't protect your money and have a safe money strategy for some of your money, you're making a mistake. And if you think the market's going to go up, just look at a video of lemmings falling off the cliff. And we did a show about that, folks. And it's probably time for me to do the show again. And we have videos of lemmings falling off the cliff. I might actually post it now on our Facebook site. But Patty, this is insanity when you look at this right now,
Exactly. And the market may have a heavy surge where it goes up, but it's not guaranteed to stay there. When you get the
wait, you mean the gains in the stock market are not guaranteed?
They're not guaranteed.
Wow, I thought they were all guaranteed. I mean, we're told that this is the best place to put your money.
Exactly. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. The only thing that we can guarantee is that it will also go down.
Oh.
If your money is in the market, if you're dealing with a stockbroker, you cannot say the word guarantee. If you deal with us, we cannot use the word investment.
That's right, because their money's not in an investment because there's no risk.
Right, we can guarantee it.
Oh, it's true. It's true.
So when we say that we're going to give you that, not us, but the companies, etc., you can get or earn 25% bonus, etc., that is permanent.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's not going to go down the next day.
Well, that's exactly right. In fact, it can go up, like we had with a client right now that, he made 9% in the first month with his account. That's a pretty good return on a safe account.
And we can lock it in.
That's right. And that's what we did. We locked it in, and he said, what do you think we should do? And we said, hey, take advantage of the rate right now.
Absolutely.
Now, folks, for those of you on Facebook that are watching the show, and those of you who are listening to the show, I've got a couple of lemmings on the screen, and they let's see if they start going over the cliff. Oh yeah.
But for those of you that are not on the show, but you're listening on the radio, you can envision it.
Yes.
I guess we should probably use your imagination.
Well, so that I can keep this PG, we're not going to show the, I don't want people to get disgusted and watch lemmings.
As a matter of fact, I have turned you off as well.
They're lining up right now.
So sad.
They're lining up to jump off the cliff. So the analogy, folks, okay, I'm going to stop the share, but for those of you on the radio, you have a visual of lemmings swimming. They're going around trying to figure out which way they're supposed to go. And now they're getting positioned to go on the cliff, and they are following each other off of the cliff. And,
yes, thank you.
And it's terrible. Okay. So you get the picture, folks, no pun intended. So, we had to, I'm sorry I had to show the lemmings, but my point, don't be a fight. Tom says it's cute. Sorry, Tom. This is live radio, folks, right now. At least we're recording live right now. But yeah, those poor lemmings. See, here's my point. Don't be a financial lemming. Don't follow each other off of the cliff. It could be very serious. And yeah, I'm making light of something that's not pleasant to watch, but the reality is I believe, now I'm going to tell you this seriously. I believe that when the market corrects, there's going to be so many unprepared people that the market can lose 30 or 40% in a very short period of time. Patty,
So you're saying,
COVID, how quick did the market
wow.
go down? It went down within 3 or 4
It
days.
was like a plump, yes, like a
Went down to
rock.
19,000.
Mhm.
What's the adage? The bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Mhm.
We're at 33. We're at new record heights. Isn't it amazing that are you benefiting from these new record heights? And are the majority of our clients, you know,
No, no,
they're not.
no, they're not.
I mean, go to the grocery store. How are we benefiting from the market being up there? We're talking the top 30 companies. That's what the Dow Jones is.
They're saying that two of the things that you even said your father liked about coming to America,
Uh-huh.
the freedom and that you could have possessions and you could have your home, etc. They're saying that the average man will no longer be able to afford a home and the average family can no longer go out to eat.
Well, it's exactly right. And Patty wasn't talking about coming to America with Eddie Murphy and
No, I was not.
Arsenio Hall. This is when my dad moved us to the United States when I was 3 years old.
He was a wee little one.
He said what makes the United States the greatest country in the world is you can be a middle class person, own a home, die with dignity, and leave something of an inheritance for your family. That was called the American dream. Folks, hopefully we can hang on to that dream and participate in that dream and leave something for our family and have a life to lead. Folks, we are out of time this segment. We've got one more segment to go. Call us at 800-440-0434. Go to mymoneyissafe.com.
I never dreamed that I'd meet somebody like you. I never dreamed that I'd lose somebody like you.
I'm here, Joe.
No, I fall in love. No,
Well, I feel a lot better then.
All right, I got to run to the bathroom for a minute.
Do you think?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have witnessed the political realm just influence every area of our life. We're paying higher taxes, we're paying higher inflation, we've got a lot of risk, we've got a lot of volatility. If you want to get rid of that risk and learn how to add double digits to your retirement account, or triple digits, or quadruple digits, call us at 800-440-0434. Think about an in-service rollover to your 401k to protect your money. We'll talk to you soon.
Biden has started tracking Christians like cattle. Yes, you heard it right. He pressured banks to tag transactions for certain keywords. One of them is Holy Bible. That's a horrifying and creepy attack on our religious freedoms. It's made possible by a digital financial system that makes you a sitting duck. But you do have other options. I recommend a physical gold IRA from Birch Gold Group. I'm Lance Wallnau, a news analyst, a best-selling author, and evangelical leader to people who cherish their financial independence. A precious metals IRA can help you avoid the scrutiny of Biden's anti-Christian bureaucracy while also preserving your retirement savings. To find out more, get your free info kit on gold IRAs by texting the word faith to 989898. Birch Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Get their free info kit and see how a gold IRA can help you. Text faith to 989898. There are no strings attached. So text faith to the number 989898 right now and take action to protect your own prosperity.
what a wicked thing to say. You never felt this way. What a wicked thing to do. To make me dream of you and I wanna fall in love. Oh, I wanna fall in love with you. With you. World was on fire, no one could
Welcome back, listeners. This is Greg Ellie of the Prosperity Group, and the song that you heard was sung by my daughter, Annie Ellie, who happens to be in Hawaii, and it's called Wicked Games, and it was made popular. I remember on PBS when I first heard the song, it was by El Divo.
Did they do it before Chris Isaac?
No, Chris Isaac did it first.
But you didn't hear Chris first.
I heard Chris Isaac too, but that caught my attention because it was sung very differently with El Divo,
Yes,
you
it
know.
was.
But I love Chris Isaac's version. Actually, I like my daughter's version. So I'm not just biased. She's good, folks. You can go to annielle.com. But so folks on the radio, we're bringing the ship home here. And if you go to our Facebook page, go to Prosperity Group at Facebook, you can see a brief picture of lemmings following each other over the cliff. And I'm serious about what I'm saying, folks.
Because you don't want their portfolio to be a lemming and it crashed.
And crashing like a lemming. That's exactly right. Patty, do you know I call it water cooler advice,
Oh, gosh, yes.
where people will go to the water cooler and they'll talk about their 401k. And, say, hey, George, what are you doing with your 401k? Oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Everybody's situation is different. And here's the problem with 401ks, folks. 401ks have taken the responsibility of investing from the companies who are responsible for pensions and things of that nature and put it on you. So how many of you are financial experts, right? So then you hire a company that's going to charge you a fee to basically do what you could do because there's not that many options left. You got to look at your accounts right now. In fact, folks, many of you need to look at fixed options right now because you can get 4 or 5% on a fixed option. And that's not a bad strategy if you're worried about market volatility. And right now, folks, if you are not taking advantage of an in-service rollover, and what an in-service rollover allows you to do, typically at 59.5, sometimes earlier, 55, they will allow you to move your 401k into an IRA, make it a self-directed IRA, because your 401k in a sense is self-directed in a sense because you're picking the strategies, but it's just limited to the same strategies for everybody. So by having the 401k and putting it into an IRA, you've just gotten it out of the risk account if you follow our strategies. If you take it out of the 401k, put it into an IRA, but you're still in the market, you did not achieve some of the benefits of making your 401k safe. So folks, in the process of doing that, we've got accounts that'll add 25 to 40% into your 401k immediately. So think about this. You got $1 million 401k. You move it over to us, and we actually can add $250,000 to $400,000 to your account. Is that a good thing, folks? You ask yourself, So this is where we can help you quite a bit. And this is what we do for many people. When we did BMW pension rollovers, we did about $10 million of BMW pensions and 401k rollovers where those folks' money is safe. And that bucket of money is a safe bucket of money. And that means we don't have to call you up and tell you the market lost 30 or 40% because your money's not in an investment. It's in a high yield savings instruments with income guarantees. And these income guarantees are quite substantial, folks. You want to, number one, protect your money. Number two, guarantee your income. That's part of the prosperity plan. Folks, you can reach us at 800-440-0434 or go to mymoneyissafe.com. Patty, we got 7 more minutes to try to get this message to folks about protecting their accounts. I can't.
Hey, Doc. You hear me okay?
You okay?
Yeah, man. How you feeling?
Good. How do we sound? Good?
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of adjustment here. Making sure
Okay.
that I'm not getting any bleed through from something else. Talk for a second, if you would, please.
Testing. 1, 2, 3 for Mr. Joe.
You got like a lav?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Where's your mic positioned? I'm just curious because I don't see it nowhere. Is it the one? Is it in front of you or is it on you?
Mike, you told me to buy it, so I did. It's a big long thing.
All right. All right.
So that's what I got. Cost me over $1,000 too, buddy boy. So it better be good.
Those are good mics. I think it's the one Bill Carl got before he started his production business.
Is that what he's doing now?
Yeah, he's doing pretty well with it too. He's a voiceover slash like radio imaging guy. He does like voiceover work for commercials, and he's got a couple of TV series that he was doing. So yeah, he's doing good.
Well, good for him. Is he working? Is he working out of the studio, or does he have it set up at home, or what?
Nah, he quit here, and he's got his own. He's got his own setup and operation. You know, he's an interesting guy because I don't know. He's probably like mid-40s when he decides that, or what he's asking himself. He's like, I really want to get some of these, bigger voiceover gigs, but I just can never seem to break through. And so he actually hired, or he consulted with a voice coach. And the voice coach talks to him and says, hey, the problem is that you're not very good, and you need to change everything about what you do. Now, this is a guy that had been doing this for, an entire career. And I think anybody that tells you after you've done anything for an amount of time, hey, you suck, you got to just completely change everything about yourself and be better. Most people are going to recoil at that, and maybe rightfully so. But man, I got to hand it to him because he really took to heart what this woman was saying to him and did the work to change. And then the doors opened up for him. And I thought that was an inspirational thing. Yeah, and it wasn't anything that he, was bragging about. He told me the story, and I bragged on him. Because anybody that can have that sort of self-reflection, and then it ended up being, quite lucrative and profitable for him.
Good
I don't
for
know.
him.
Yeah, man. I don't think that I could listen to somebody tell me that but then again, I'm also not trying to be a voiceover artist. So there's, it's all about what we prioritize. Anyway, how are things?
They seem to be going along okay.
You look good.
Thank you. We're staying a little busy, but not as busy as last year. So she hasn't had the money coming in. Medicare had some problems. One of their big clearinghouses was hacked, and that slowed down Medicare payments. So she's a little upset, but she grew up poor, so money's important to her.
Yeah. I can understand that.
And I figure if I've got a sandwich and a TV, somewhere to crash, I don't care anymore.
That's a healthy way to look at it. That may be all we have left here after everybody gets done doing what they're doing.
Oh, I'm sure that something will happen. We hope. I hope Trump gets back in.
Certainly seems to be trending in that way, but
you never know.
You never know.
Because there's still a long time.
Yeah. So there is a long time, and I think there's probably, I don't know what the percentages of the expectation is that Biden's not even going to be the guy that's on the ballot when we get there. What do you think? You think that when we get to November, that's going to be the contest?
I don't know. I mean, he could drop dead at any moment. And he's got a pretty big machine, so even in dementia, he could probably get the nomination. I don't see anybody really challenging him.
Well, I could see the prevailing wisdom or the fear, I guess, is that he's such, let's say he does these debates with Trump, and does as poorly as anybody would expect that he would do. Okay, if that happens, and they say, okay, this guy just can't. He can't. It can't be this. It's that embarrassing. Now, I'm not predicting that's going to happen. I think actually the guy's kind of sandbagging a little bit when it comes to the doddering old fool stuff. I mean, he always kind of has been, but I think a lot of the, I think actually a lot of it is just sort of, he becomes a softer target when he appears to be completely, because he kind of did this during 2020, completely unable to put two sentences together, and then he's somewhat lucid and cogent whenever the debates come. I think that the guy, but anyway, if the powers that be, if the machine that you're talking about decides they don't want him, well, then, yeah, like the room temperature option that you just mentioned could certainly take hold. At whether he wants it to or not, like I wouldn't put it above these people. But the one that a lot of people are pointing at is Gavin Newsom, because they seem to be charismatic and so forth. Yeah, I don't know if it would be effective. It's just that would be the thought process, that he's younger and more charismatic and so on and so on.
I think that what people don't understand is that when he actually perks up, it's because they've given him medications. There's a medicine called Provigil that we use in patients who are mildly demented, and that will, and in the short term, will gin them up somewhat, and they can function a little bit better. So, and that's what happened when he did the State of the Union. You could tell that he had Provigil or some mild stimulant with the wide eyes and the bushy tail and all that. Most of the time he's shuffling around like a guy with Parkinson's disease, which is what he has. And along with Parkinson's comes dementia. But they've done a pretty good job with his medications over the past 3 years. So they might be able to get him through to the election. He's really had good neurologic care. And I think it's a real compliment to how far neurological medications have come in the past decade or two. There's really a lot of good medications out there now for Parkinsonism. And we may find a cure for it at some point in the near future.
Okay, well, it's an interesting point of discussion where it seems to be in this space where a lot of people are just expecting that when the convention comes around, because nothing could stop the Democrats from just doing whatever they want to do. I mean, they've made it very clear that they'll do whatever, regardless what the will of their voters want. Last several election cycles, they've demonstrated that.
Yeah, but the Democrats, well, I think any powerful politico will have a machine behind him, and Biden's been building that machine for 50 years now, so 60 years. So he's pretty well embedded, and he's got a good group of people, and he's got a lot of money coming in. So you can't listen to Hollywood because they don't really know what's going on.
Well, that's true all the time.
Yep.
I don't know how much Biden controls that aspect of the machine, or how much he's just a part of it.
Well, I think it may have gone to his wife and his people that are around him, but he's still the figurehead. He's still the mouthpiece. So they're not going to let go of that. I'll guarantee you. There's something about power and money that is very infatuating, even for women.
Oh, no. Even for women. Right. Normally they hold the line on such things.
Yeah, it's not just men that like that,
Are you sure? Well, yeah, I mean, it is an interesting season, to be sure. Well, I've got your songs. Is there anything about the program that I should know about? That, I mean,
well, we do ask a question at halftime and give away a couple of mugs. So
I got that process.
And you know how I am. You can follow me. I'm very easy. So.
Oh yeah.
It's just like we're sitting down and having a discussion in the living room.
Pretty much. It's kind of how it's been every time that I've ever filled in for the show before.
Yeah. Now, the show that's on before me, I'm not quite sure about, but you can't say anything. They're your customer.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix there.
Yeah.
He's a really, really good guy. Not
that impression.
Not sure about the style.
Yeah.
Some of it, but it appears to be working for him. So
yeah, he's making money off of it. So good for him.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's working, and he's doing it in multiple markets. So the approach obviously works. He does it live on Wednesdays when we're recording it. Like, it goes on Facebook, does it live on his socials. And then, so he talks about it like it's a live show, even though it's obviously, being recorded in advance.
Yep.
But like I say, it's working for him.
All right, I'm going to run to the restroom real quick before the show starts.
Cool. We got like about 4 minutes.
Yep. Hang on.
You got it.
Selection of cigars and accessories in the country. Corona Cigar is located at 4142 West Boy Scout Boulevard across from International Plaza, or visit coronacigar.com.
With SRN News, I'm Michael Harrington in Washington. Former President Trump was endorsed by the nation's premier gun rights organization Saturday.
For more than 150 years, the NRA has been defined by men and women like all of you, loyal, hardworking citizens who believe in defending your families and your communities and our country.
He pledged to continue to defend the Second Amendment and called himself the best friend gun owners ever had in the White House. He says those gun owners need to get out and vote in the 2024 election. More trouble for Ukraine in its fight against Russia.
A divisive mobilization law in Ukraine came into force on Saturday as Kyiv struggles to boost troop numbers after Russia launched a new offensive that some fear could close in on Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. The legislation, which was watered down from its original draft, will make it easier to identify every conscript in the country. It also provides incentives to soldiers, such as cash bonuses or money toward buying a house or car. The measures reflect the growing strain that more than 2 years of war with Russia has had on Ukraine's forces, who are trying to hold the front lines in fighting that's sapped the country's ranks and stores of weapons and ammunition. I'm Charles Villadesma.
Elon Musk has arrived in Indonesia's resort island of Bali to launch Starlink satellite internet service in the world's largest archipelago nation. The billionaire head of Tesla and SpaceX and the owner of the social platform X arrived today by private jet on the idyllic island. He's slated to launch the service alongside Indonesian President Joko Widodo at a ceremony later today. As the Houston area works to clean up and restore power to hundreds of thousands after deadly storms left at least 7 people dead, it will do so amongst increasing heat. 100-degree heat index is coming. This is SRN News.
It's a Prosperity Minute with Greg Ellie and the Prosperity Group in Sarasota.
What is your Social Security strategy? Are you aware that we have a vehicle that I've coined the phrase a P-slip? That's right, a P-slip. It stands for Properly Structured Life Insurance Plan. Did you know that you can set one that's properly structured so that you can extract tax-free revenue from your account? If you want to learn how you can do this, and in some instances have a bank add 3 times into your account, please give me a call.
Safe money strategies from the Prosperity Group include retirement planning, wealth management, tax planning, and estate and legacy planning. The Prosperity Group online at mymoneyissafe.com or call 800-440-0434. That's mymoneyissafe.com or call 800-440-0434.
Helping you get where you're trying to go. Get digital media solutions for your business. Visit surroundtampa.com. Surroundtampa.com. Just when you thought your smartphone couldn't get any.
All right. After the weather, we will get started.
The app with local news, national headlines, and
I'm here.
The answer is smart. Adding the AM 860 app to your smartphone is genius. Get it now at the Apple App Store and Google Play.
For today, intervals of clouds and sunshine with a thunderstorm. Not as hot, but humid. Thunderstorms can bring localized damage and wind gusts with a high of 86. For tonight, mostly cloudy skies, warm and humid with a low of 76. For tomorrow, mostly sunny with a high of 90. Tomorrow night, a thunderstorm in spots in the evening with a low of 73. That's your AccuWeather forecast. I'm Caitlin Lawrence for AM 860, The Answer.
The following program is sponsored by Bay Area Medical Can Care Clinic. All right, you're up.
You let me know when we're ready, Joe,
You ready?
because I can't hear the music.
You can't hear that?
No.
It's playing. It's ready. You're up.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Bill, your radio MD. I got Joe with me today. We gave Ken the weekend off. I think he's down in the Keys and probably blowing smoke all over the place down there. but that's it's not. We're not going to change that, are we? We'll just have to get on him when we can. And speaking of Elon Musk, he has arrived in the South Pacific in Bali. Bali High. You remember that? That was uh, part of the musical from way back when. But it's interesting. I was going to mention this. I did not know how many little islands we own down in that area. And behind me, there's a list of islands and who owns them, and French Polynesia, Micronesia, Marshall Islands. And you see the little USA dots all over the place. Not only do we have the American Samoa and the Guam territories, but we also have a bunch of little islands, I guess, that we kept after World War II. And other territories that we have include the Virgin Islands and, of course, Puerto Rico. And the idea is that at some point, if they want to become a state, they can become a state, but they have to meet certain requirements before Congress will consider them. So that's interesting, though. I did not know we had all these territories down in the South Pacific. Fascinating, don't you think? I do. At any rate, just wanted to touch on that. Thought you might enjoy that. Now, I do want to talk about, because this is a fascinating subject, about polymyalgia rheumatica. Now, polymyalgia rheumatica is an autoimmune disease, and it's related to rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and these other autoimmune diseases. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I admitted a patient with pneumonia earlier in the week, and she was pretty sick. She was septic. She had bacteria in her bloodstream. But I do this with all of my older patients. I do a sedimentation rate, which is a nonspecific test for inflammation. And what we do is we take anticoagulated blood. So we take blood, mix it with heparin or some way to keep it from clotting, and we put it in a tube, and we see how far it falls over a period of time. Usually it's an hour. And the faster the red cells fall through the serum or the plasma, the more positive that test is. So usually when we have someone with a SED rate as high as this lady had, which was like 120 or 130, then we start to worry about, in her age group, polymyalgia rheumatica, which is a disease mainly of people over 50. And it hits more white people than non-white people, Northern Europeans. There's not a known cause, although there's sort of an expected influence from some kind of virus and genetic predisposition that can trigger this. And it's also related to giant cell arteritis, which is an inflammation of arteries about the size of pencil lead. And those are still big arteries. And the problem with this disease is that not only is it painful, and it affects the shoulder girdle and the hip girdle, as you can see behind me, but it also can affect the blood vessels, and this can add to one's dementia and one's problems with vessels that feed the brain, and of course, the biggest brain sensory organ is the eye, and that actually comes right off of the brain. So the communication between the eye and the brain is direct. There is no intermediary. That is part of the brain. So if you want to see your brain, just look at your eye. You got it. And these inflammatory conditions can cause blindness, dementia, many strokes, deterioration of the brain. So we want to treat this, and the treatment is prednisone or some type of cortisone. And we start off with big doses, and we taper it down, and we can go on and off it depending on what stage your disease is in, whether it's active or inactive. So it's a really fascinating phenomenon. It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. And the symptoms are going to be shoulder girdle pain, your upper chest, your pecs, your scapular area and your back, going up your neck. And the differential diagnosis is going to be things like disc disease in your neck and rheumatoid arthritis. Those are probably the two big things that we have to differentiate between. Now, what are the tests for it? Well, you can do a blood count. Of course, you want to do that anyway and get some chemistries to make sure you don't have something else going on, like an autoimmune liver problem. But the test for things like rheumatoid arthritis should be run. However, they're not going to be positive. So the main thing is going to be the sedimentation rate. That is the sine qua non. However, I do add an interleukin-6 to my blood panel, and although that's not mentioned in the literature by many people, Dr. Bill knows a little bit more than some of these young boys that are writing these and girls that are writing these papers. And the interleukin-6 in this lady was maybe 20 times the normal. So sed rate and interleukin-6 are what I use. However, you can make this diagnosis pretty much on the sed rate and the symptomatology. And it's a not uncommon disease. So all chest pain does not mean it's your heart. So, that's one of the main things that we take away from it. And I've had doctors send patients out of their office with chest pain and say, well, it's not your heart, so you're okay. And then they come into me and I diagnose polymyalgia and treat it and they get better. And there you go. So that's the story on that, Joe. I know that you're terribly interested because you haven't said a word.
Well, I'm just enthralled by, all of this information that's coming my way. That's all,
Yeah.
which I normally am when I'm talking to you.
So, at any rate, that's polymyalgia. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about medically, since that's what I do at the beginning of the show most of the time, is the Medicare bubble, which is busting. So the insurance companies like Aetna and Humana that have relied so heavily on the Medicare money the government's doling out for these Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare HMOs, they are tanking now because the Medicare dollar has been stretched so thin, and the demand for care from the seniors has increased dramatically since the COVID epidemic swept through. And that Medicare Advantage is costing close to $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year. Now, our national budget is 5 or 6 trillion. So you can imagine the percentage of the budget that is going to Medicare. And as I've said before, the entitlement programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, aid to families with dependent children, and military, health care, all these benefits add up to over 51% of the federal budget. So this is a big deal. And the cost is going up so rapidly because of the increased demand and the stress that's being put on the system. And of course, these companies were in competition with each other. CVS did buy Aetna, and Humana, they've all been in this market, United Healthcare. And so they have tried to lure patients in by offering more benefits. And so they had things like gymnasium benefits, and you can have so much extra money a month, and you can use it to get over-the-counter medications and not just your prescriptions. And they threw in a lot of little candy canes to keep you coming into their product and using their product. And of course, the doctors that got in on the HMO boom early and have had their own business started by this, they have become extremely wealthy, and I have a few of those that I eat lunch with. And of course, they think that they're doing a service because they're cutting down on the healthcare expenses. But I've always maintained that this is just a redistribution of the wealth. You're just taking money out of the doctor's pockets that are seeing the patients and putting it into those who are shrewd enough businessmen to get in on this up front, and into the pockets of the bureaucrats and into the pockets of the health insurers like Aetna and United Healthcare and Humana. But their stocks are going down, and what goes up must go down, and nothing's forever. This is a little bit of a bubble. The more the government gets involved, the more screwed up things become. Of course, you could never go back now because people would not be able to negotiate self-pay rates. They just wouldn't know how to do it. And that's one of the problems that I have with the government coming into every aspect of our life, is it basically makes us not independent and not able to think for ourselves. And I hear this from the Canadians, not all of them, but I hear this a lot of the time. They'll say, well, our health care doesn't cost anything. I'm quick to point out, oh, yes, it does. You pay more for your health care than we do for ours, and you get a lot less. So they have a sales tax in the provinces, and the provinces set their own rates depending on it. So it's a value added tax. And in some provinces, it's 15%. 15%, Joe. And then the government also has to subsidize with the Canadian government with the income from their personal income tax, and they also have to borrow, so they're heavily in debt. And the Canadians do not get what we get. Now, if you're in a crisis, in a life and death situation, they get you to the ER, you're going to get good care. But if you have a hip that needs to be replaced, you may hobble around for a year or two without being able to get any help for that. Same with your knees, same with things like hernias. And you say, well, what's the big deal with a hernia? Well, hernias hurt. And if the bowel comes out and it gets strangled by the muscles of the belly wall, then you can have a crisis and you have to go in and they'll probably have to take out a little bit of your bowel, loop of bowel, and sew that back together. So then you got surgery and you've got secondary problems, and then you have a certain percentage of people who are going to have post-operative infections and so on and so forth. So there is a downside to the selective healthcare system that socialism brings in with it. And it looks like we're headed that way. And that certainly is what the HMOs were meant to do. They were meant to restrict the amount of healthcare you receive to only the very necessary and basics. And I think there are a lot of people that have bought into this or have had to do it because of finances. So maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was 13 to 15%. And now it's up to, I'd say about 40 plus percent of the population, the senior population that is involved in and subscribes to the Medicare Advantage plans, which is an HMO plan. And it's administered by different healthcare insurers around the country, as we've been talking about. So the healthcare stocks, not necessarily the hospital stocks, but the healthcare insurance stocks have been going down, and that's something you may want to take a look at if it's in your portfolio. I don't know how long it's going to drop, but who knows? Who knows? So Joe, did you hear about Scotty Scheffler being arrested?
So I am not up to speed on this particular story. You're going to have to inform me on this.
So Scotty Scheffler, for those of you who do not know, is the #1 pro golfer in the world. So he has the leading ranking of anybody in the world, and they're playing the PGA, which is one of the big four tournaments, along with the British Open, the U.S. Open, and of course at Augusta National, the Masters. So those are the four big ones. And Scotty just won last week the U.S. Open. So he's driving to the golf course in Louisville, Valhalla, which I've been to. Beautiful course. And it's like 6 a.m. and it's raining out, and there was an accident on the road going up to the golf course, and someone was killed. So there were police cars and road blockages, and he tried to pull around and go and head into the club so he could get to the locker room. And I guess one of the policemen stopped him and said, "No, you can't go in." And I'm not sure if there was really anything that ensued, but the policeman said that he was assaulted by Scheffler. I think Scheffler tried to open his door to get out and explain to him. And so they arrested him and they put him in a cell at the Hooskow. And they said, "Well, Scotty, what'd you do while you were in prison, in the jail?" And he said, I did my morning stretching exercises to get ready for the tournament. And then I guess they let him go in time for him to get there for his tee time. And he actually birdied the first hole and then birdied several holes for that round. And that was on Friday. So poor Scotty, he got busted, and he really wasn't doing anything.
Was it like a "do you know who I am" type situation, or was it just a miscommunication all around in your estimation, based on what you've seen and heard?
Well, I don't want to disparage the police, but
right.
come on, they're not the brightest guys on the planet, brightest guys and gals. And you don't want too bright of people. You don't want somebody overthinking the situation. You want them to enforce the law and not try to be a judge and a jury. But however, there are times when that doesn't work. And I think that it was an overzealous cop who was emotionally charged by the situation, because really the number of deaths that the police come in contact with are nowhere near what they used to be. I mean, the murder rate has gone down precipitously over the past 40, 50 years. Death by automobile accidents, percentage-wise, has gone down. Even though it's still high, it's gone down considerably. And so these guys are not used to seeing death situations, and that's very upsetting to most people who've never seen it. And so I think that there was some miscommunication as well as some emotions involved. And Scotty was probably trying to get out of the car to explain to him who he was. And the cop thought that he was going to assault him, because nowadays, the cops tell you, don't get out of your car, stay in your car. And in the old days, it was get out of your car. So it goes back and forth. So now you're not supposed to get out of your car, and he got out of his car. Well, they don't like that. The police think you're coming out with a gun to shoot him. And with all this publicity about the number of cops being hurt and killed in the line of duty, it's going to make these guys super sensitive, and their levels of awareness and anxiety a lot higher. So they're going to react. Another reason not to mess with the police. They got badges and they got guns. So if they tell you to do something, just do it. You can always bring it up in court later, but don't argue with the police. If they tell you to stay in your car, just stay in there and don't do anything that they don't want you to do.
Sure, it could be you could be in the right, but how much aggravation do you really want to deal with? Although what's interesting about this particular situation is, okay, so that obviously was a clear, nuisance for to say it in low scale, was a nuisance for this golfer, but did it perhaps sharpen him? Right, so you figure that golf has got to be one of the most cerebral things in terms of you're in your own head, because it's not the most physically arduous thing to accomplish, right? Like hitting a golf ball, hitting it straight, right? Hitting it well, that's all a function of mentality, I would think. I'm certainly not a professional golfer, but to me, it seems like it's more of a thing that requires concentration more than it requires like real physical acumen. So is it possible that sort of going through that stress before going into a tournament like that, because you mentioned he birdies the first hole, birdies the next couple of holes, is it possible that kind of going through that whole situation in the morning before getting into the tournament sort of cleared his mind for the tournament? So in other words, instead of getting his own head about, well, I really got to, hit this first hole, and he didn't have time to think about any of that. He's trying to get there. Is it possible that that's a benefit?
It could be. I don't know. I do think that it takes us a certain physical acumen to be a good golfer. And not only do you have to be coordinated and have a lot of fast twitch fiber, but you got to be in decent shape. These guys,
sure,
they don't look like, pro football players, but that kind of muscle bulk would not help them. They need the longer, stringier types of muscle to really play well. And but what would it do to his mentation? I would think it'd be a distraction, but I think that this goes to the kind of personality that becomes a good golfer. And as you said, a lot of this is mental. And this guy can focus, and he can focus like nobody's business, which is what you have to do when you're out there on the course. You have to really, really focus. You cannot let anything distract you. So I think it's quite a compliment to him that he was able to put that all aside and go out there and shoot quite a good round of golf.
Yeah,
Subpar.
I agree, and I think that it's a testament to that. And I wonder again if if he didn't have that, right? If he didn't have those distractions and and I don't know anything about this gentleman, so I mean, and I certainly don't mean to disparage the physicality of golfers and that sort of thing. That's not my point. It's just more that once you get to a certain level, it really isn't about who the strongest guy is or who, like it really has more to do with the mental aspect of the game. And so is it possible that in this situation, and obviously we're just, it's all conjecture anyway, but is it a situation where if he would have just been sitting there thinking about that first hole for hours before actually doing it, as opposed to being rushed from place to place, and now he can't really think about all of these things because he's peripherally, absorbed with the situation that he's in. Now, okay, I'm on the course. All I can do is hit the ball. I liken it to, and maybe it's an imperfect example, but like kickers in professional football, for example. They all can kick it really far. And most of them can kick it pretty straight when they want to, but they have the hardest time doing it when the pressure is on and they're in front of a crowd. And if you miss it, then, you hit the ball and it goes straight. And then you have a lifestyle as a professional athlete. You miss that thing and you are coaching the JV team at your local high school. Like, it's that level of pressure when it comes to those guys. And I wonder if it's a corollary to some of those guys in the golf course.
I think that there are people who actually perform better under pressure and perform better when they're before an audience. I think it helps them to focus even more. And the example I always use are comedians. How on earth do they do that? These are pretty bright guys that are comedians, and they're pretty focused to be able to get up on stage and go through a whole routine, even with people heckling them and a lot of laughter and a lot of distractions. But I think that this really, again, goes to the mental, not only acuity, but mental focus that is needed to be a good extra point kicker or a good passer or whatever. You really got to focus, and you got to put everything out of your mind. You know?
And I love that.
It's the same way when you and I go to work. I mean, you're quite successful at what you do. And I know you, and I know that when you go to work, you focus on what you're doing, on the thing before you. And I've worked with you, so I know.
Well, I've worked with you in a different way from the standpoint that I've actually been your patient and so forth. And I agree with, and I love the corollary that you're making there with comedians, because you're right. It's a different type of pressure. Like there's nothing physical about what they're doing, although I guess you could say physical comedy and so forth. But you're right. They got to connect with an audience that they don't know. And when the really good ones are acting like they sort of do know who these people are that they're talking to. And to liken it to sort of what we do in the radio business, because you just said something interesting. Some people just perform better under pressure. I'll give you an example. I have seen people that have been able to do something on the air live. Like right now, if you were going to do a commercial for somebody, you read it live, no problems at all. And I'm just using you as an example. And no issues, no worries, like it just hits it perfectly. You take that same person and you take them off the live mic, and we're going to record this commercial, and they're reading it. I've seen the same people perform perfectly when they're live, but then when they know that they have the safety net of being able to record it and edit it, now they're stumbling and stammering and fumbling around and getting it wrong, because there's something about not having that pressure on them that makes them less capable of really hitting it on the first try. So and I don't, to me, I don't know there's really any way to quantify this or qualify this or gauge this in somebody, but you're exactly right. There are some people that are just naturally more comfortable in pressurized situations, even versus, sort of having the long runway to be able to do something. And I mean, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way when it comes to that sort of thing. It's fascinating how some people are good at it and can just do it naturally, and other people, they're just completely, it freaks them out if there's any sort of pressure on them at all.
Well, I think the best example of that is President Clinton. He is lost when he's not on stage, but when there's a crowd before him, he really becomes a different person. And whether you like his politics or not, you got to admire his ability to do that. Any rate, we'll move on to something else. And good luck to Scotty. So there's a couple of countries around the world that are in the throes of revolutions or getting close to it. And believe it or not, New Caledonia in the South Pacific, which is a French possession or territory, they're in a big brouhaha because some of the local parliament people want to change the constitution to let non-native people who have immigrated there or who have been there for a generation or two to vote. And they don't want that. They don't want it diluted down. This is a population that's been there for thousands of years and has had some intermixing from other cultures and other genetic lines that have made it to the island. But it's fascinating to see. And then Georgia, which is a country in Eastern Europe that borders Russia and is on the Black Sea, they're having a big brouhaha because some of the country wants to get closer to Russia and have a more strict and restrictive, I should say, government, and others want to move more towards the European model and join the European market and join NATO. And so there's a big to-do going on. And of course, Russia's influencing the situation. I don't know how much we're involved. You don't know, but you hope that we're in there and hope the Europeans are doing what they can to convince the general population of Georgia not to go back into the Russian era restrictive governing, I guess, the Soviet system that Putin would like to reinstitute into that part of the world. And I think it's important for us because of the implications of the Ukraine, if we lose that, that's going to tip the balance for countries like Georgia, and they will end up back in the Soviet or the Russian sphere of influence. Remember, the Russians have been trying to take over the Black Sea for centuries. They need that as a warm water port for their exports and imports, because you think about it, they are in a very northern latitude, and most of the ports are frozen up in the winter, so it's a little bigger problem. How long will shipping be a major part of world trade? Long time. We don't have anything yet that can match the size of ships that can move hundreds of thousands of pieces of cargo and hundreds of thousands of tons of goods as easily and as quickly as a big ship can. The big cargo ship. Water has very little resistance, so it doesn't take much energy to move a big boat across a big body of water. And so this is important to the Russians, and they want that. They want that warm water port. And the only way they're going to get it is to either take it by force, as they're doing in the Ukraine, or gain influence over the countries that border the Black Sea and utilize their powers and their ability to ship through their client countries. So it's a tough situation. I don't know how much our administration is really involved or understands or knows what to do. I think they're trying to play both sides of the street with the liberal part of the party that is socialistic, internationalistic, and pacifistic. And of course, that doesn't work. But trying to convince my sisters of that is hopeless. It's an emotional appeal. It's an emotional appeal.
As most are.
And it's not a good way to conduct business. You got to use your head, not your heart. As I've said before, the heart weighs about 300 or 400 grams, and the brain weighs about 1,500. The heart doesn't have much ability to think, and the brain has millions of times more connections than even the fastest computer. It's unbelievable how many billions and billions of connections there are in the brain between the cells. And they're always talking, even when you're asleep. So, at any rate, Joe, looks like we're at halftime. Have you got a question for us today for two Dr. Bill mugs?
That's right. So I wanted to sort of, have the question be germane to what we've been talking about. Of course, we've been talking, about a lot of different things this morning so far. So you mentioned President Clinton. And so it's been quite a few decades now since his presidency. This one should be easy, but maybe not so easy unless you were living through it. President Clinton won 2 elections in 1992 and 1996, did not actually win a majority in either of those elections, but in 1996, when he ran for re-election, who was his primary, not his primary as far as primary election, who was his primary adversary in that election? Who did he beat And there actually is two potential answers to this, but one primary and one secondary. We're giving out two mugs, so I figure if you get one of either of them, then you qualify. Does that sound fair?
That sounds fair to me. So let's have a number to call.
Oh, that would be a good thing. 877-969-8600, 877-969-8600 for the 1996 presidential election, which doesn't seem like it was that long ago, Doc, but we're talking almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years. All right, this is Dr. Bill. I got Joe by my side, and we'll be right back. Hang in there, folks. Don't go anywhere.
Experience the best selection of cigars and accessories in the country. Corona Cigar is located at 4142 West Boy Scout Boulevard across from International Plaza, or visit coronacigar.com.
Hopefully you're hearing that okay.
With SRN News, I'm Michael Harrington in Washington. Former President Trump talked to the National Rifle Association yesterday. He was formally endorsed by that organization.
You're hearing the commercials come through okay, right?
As he will be and has been the best friend that gun owners have ever had in the White House, and he encourages gun owners to get out and vote in 2024. A judge's decision on a lawsuit against Ohio's ban on most abortions could be near. Hamilton County Judge Christian Jenkins' ruling could come as soon as Monday. It will take into account voters' approval in November of a constitutional amendment assuring abortion in the state constitution. The 2019 law bans most abortions once a baby's heartbeat can be detected in the womb as early as 6 weeks. This is SRN News.
Dr. Bill for Bay Area Medical, located at 6399 38th Avenue North in St. Pete, 727-384-6411, 727-384-6411. Full service clinic with x-ray, heart imaging, ultrasound, stress testing, and minor surgery. We provide quality health care in a warm and friendly atmosphere. We are multilingual, well-trained, and certified. Most American insurance and new patients accepted. Bay Area Medical, home of Can Care, 727-384-6411. 727-384-6411. Dr. Bill here. With social distancing and sheltering in place, telemedicine is here. Bay Area Medical Home of Can Care Clinic offers telemedicine for new and established patients. You can see me without an in-office visit. Schedule an appointment at 727-384-6411, 727-384-6411. When it's time for your appointment, type this web address into your cell phone or computer web browser, doxy.me/Bay Area Med. A cell phone works well and is all you really need. For computers, you need a web camera and speakers. We'll give you this address when you call for your appointment. We accept most insurances and travel insurances. Canadians and visitors, please call your travel insurance company for an authorization number prior to the visit. Copays and deductibles apply. Self-pay rates are available. Just ask. We accept credit cards, PayPal, and Stripe. 727-384-6411, 727-384-6411. Dr. Bill here. My friends at St. Pete MRI and Sleep Diagnostics are your best choice for state-of-the-art MRI, CT, and sleep studies. Quality unsurpassed. 25 years experience makes St. Pete MRI my go-to imaging center. Self-pay rates are competitive and out-of-pocket cost a fraction of a hospital. Conveniently accessible from both sides of the bay at 750 94th Avenue North, St. Pete, near the Gandhi. 727-577-2220, 727-577-2220.
Helping you get where you're trying to go. Get digital media solutions for your business. Visit surroundtampa.com. Surroundtampa.com.
For today, intervals of clouds and sunshine with a thunderstorm. Not as hot, but humid. Thunderstorms can bring localized damage and wind gusts with a high of 86. For tonight, mostly cloudy skies, warm and humid with a low of 76. For tomorrow, mostly sunny with a high of 90. Tomorrow night, a thunderstorm in spots in the evening with a low of 73. That's your AccuWeather forecast. I'm Caitlin Lawrence for AM 860, The Answer.
All right, Doctor, mic is up.
And I'm back. This is Dr. Bill, your radio MD. I got Joe by my side. We gave Ken the weekend off. I don't know why. We should put a ball and chain on that boy.
He earned it.
Did he? Okay, we'll let him go then. Now, maybe he'll quit smoking while he's down there, but I doubt it. So, Joe, did you hear about this billboard, 120 by 120 foot structure in Mumbai, the former Bombay, the capital, not the capital, but the biggest city in India, Mumbai. It fell and it killed 14 people and injured hundreds. It was 120 feet by 120 feet. Now, as you know, a football field is 300 feet long. That's 100 yards, right? So this thing was almost half the length of a football field in square. And of course, it was there illegally, as many things I'm sure in India are. They're slowly getting their hands around the I don't want to say the chaos, but we'll say the cowboy approach to a lot of business and politics in India. And Modi is really doing a good job, but it takes time to change a culture, especially when you got 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 billion people now. That's a big country. Can you imagine this thing coming down? It came right down on top of a big service station with a quickie store and probably a restaurant and all that in there. Dang, go in for a cup of coffee and fill up your tank, and wham, you get whacked by 120 by 120 foot sign coming down on your head. Oh my God, I can't imagine that. That must
just faulty in construction or high wind or a combination of both. Like, what was the reason for it?
Well, I think that it was there illegally, and the winds were high. It's probably the monsoon season over there, and so it's 14,400 square feet, and that's a big sail. And the winds can whip up pretty high during the monsoon season. And this was placed illegally, so it probably was not inspected, and probably that was a fatal mistake. And whatever company put that up, I'm sure they won't be in business long.
Well, that begs the next question: is do we know what was being advertised on the sign? That may that's an interesting way to couch the conversation.
I did not look, but I should have.
So then the follow-up question to that is, because that the way that they sell billboard space is, so much space, so much time. So does the advertiser get, any return on their investment with the sign coming down?
That I don't know, but that is an interesting question.
May not matter if they go out of business, as you say.
Yeah, it's not going to matter. They'll be gone. Modi's actually, the Indians like a strong central government, and they like being told what to do. I think that that is part of the process of evolving from a long time lower middle class population into an upper middle class population. And it takes time. I'm not talking days or weeks or months or years. I'm talking centuries. So they're probably happy that Modi will step in and do something drastic. And, if you cross Modi, that's not a good thing to do. You won't be around. So he will remove you from whatever position you are in. And the Indians do have agents in Pakistan. They have secret agents that will actually go in and kill terrorists. So good for them. In violation of international law, of course. Now, there's a Swiss family in the Alps, or actually a Chinese family in the Alps, that bought a hotel right next to an airstrip that has an F-35 on it. As you know, Joe, the F-35 is the second most sophisticated fighter jet in the world after the F-22. Now, we do not sell the F-22. The F-22 is too advanced to put into the hands of anybody outside of the United States. But the F-35 we have franchised throughout the world. And one of the things that we agreed to is that if you are a country buying F-35s, that you will have a part of the action. So like if you sell 100 F-35s to Japan, they want to be able to produce one aspect of the plane. So they may make a wing support, or they may make a part of the engine, or they may make several different parts of the plane, and they get to make a little money off of this, which is good. So the Swiss obviously have bought a few planes, and they have this plane sitting on top of a mountain on a runway. As you know, it's difficult to have a big centralized place for planes like this in Switzerland.
Sure.
And the Swiss have a perfect defensive situation there because they have a lot of mountains and a lot of mountain passes, and a few soldiers like the Greek 300 Spartans who held off 300,000 Persians at the Thermopylae Pass. They have that same situation there, and so they can also decentralize their airplanes and put a jet on a small airstrip up in the mountains somewhere here and there. And so this Chinese family is there right next to this F-35. And of course, that's got everybody nervous because the governments and the intelligence community are concerned that they're going to gain information about this plane and send it back to China, which can help the Chinese build a better airplane, as well as give them a way to make countermeasures for this F-35, which is almost invisible. And you don't know it's there until you're getting bombed. And so this is a problem for the Western world to try to decide what to do. And of course, this Chinese family says, we're not doing anything. We just bought this in up here to run and get out of China. Who knows? But interesting that would be something that we would be looking at. And you don't hear much about this in the press because it's not politically popular. And of course, the liberal press doesn't want to say anything too bad about the Chinese. I think they kind of like that form of government. One party state with a strong man at top and private enterprise, but only private enterprise that the government wants. And that's called socio-fascism. That's exactly what fascism is. And then the social aspect of it, which a lot of people don't know, is that the fascist governments did and do supply a lot of programs for people like healthcare and welfare and so on and so forth. And that's one reason that Hitler was so popular in the early and mid 30s. He had all the women voting for him because he had all these social programs, all these entitlement programs. And the women were like, well, he's a good guy. He cares about the little people. Well, not all the little people, but
right.
So we've got a situation where we have to be very careful about what we give and where, although military secrets are often very difficult to keep. But at any rate, I'm sure we did not give the Swiss the most sophisticated equipment because they are more open as a society, and I'm sure they don't have the same kind of guards and guardrails up that a lot of the countries we deal with do, who are or have been involved in the Cold Wars and the World Wars. Remember, the Swiss are neutral; they haven't been in a war in centuries. Tough to take them.
Sure. And one might assume, or at least suspect, that anything that we would franchise out to the world, as you say, that there would be some sort of expectation that it could potentially fall into the wrong hands. And so how much, if any, misinformation exists within the DNA of these things so as to throw off potential counterfeiters, so to speak? You know what I mean?
Well, I hope that there is, but you have to be careful not to give too much credit to the government. Now, the people who actually designed and built this thing, I don't know if it was Grumman or Northrop or Boeing. I forget who made it, but you would hope that they have bright enough and insightful enough engineers and computer nerds that they can build certain things into these machines that make it difficult to get information out of them unless you're a pilot and you know what you're doing. But, I mean, who says you can't have a Chinese pilot come over and nose around at your end up there in the mountains? I wonder how the rates are up there. We ought to check on that, Joe. We might want to take a little trip over there. Then we can get a close-up view of an F-35.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm not just saying like trying to hide information, but giving misinformation. It's almost like super rich people will buy counterfeit money that they hide around their house. So that way, if they get robbed or if they're trying to find somebody that's stealing from them, they have like they sort of set out bait, but you can't actually get to the real information. So how much misinformation and counterfeit information are we putting out there for people in this? And to your point, is me assuming something like that, giving the folks that would make this decision a little bit too much credit because, government officials aren't necessarily the most competent people in the history of the world.
Well, I think that that there's I agree with you to a certain respect, but I think that a lot of the people in government, especially the elected officials in the Senate, I think that these are, for the most part, fairly bright guys and gals. But the problem is their knowledge is in the field of law, most of them,
Right.
And so they really don't understand all of the intricacies of the technical world and the scientific world, and that's why they have so many people consulting with them and aides and congressional lawyers and all that. But it is a problem that we have bureaucratic people that don't actually have a full understanding of what's going on. I mean, it's just like nuclear energy. Most people are so afraid of it because of all the bad press they've heard, and therein probably lies the problem. Is the press corps is woefully undereducated. You just can't teach the kinds of math and sciences to people who like to read and write. It's just a different brain setup, a different system. And it takes a really unique person like yours truly who can read and write and understand nuclear physics.
I wouldn't argue with that.
So, and you'd be surprised at how limited the skills are with a lot of people. And even though that they're highly successful and have made big money in their respective professions, I'm working with people here at the homeowners association, and I really do. One of my guys who I just love to death, and he is just the hardest working guy I know, can't understand half of what he writes to me because he writes like a seventh grader, and I'm not used to reading at that level. But so then I have to go back and say, well, what do you mean by this? And he uses words that the meanings for him are quite different than what's in the dictionary, and so it's always a little bit of a dilemma for me to try to unravel what the hell he's saying and meaning. It doesn't mean he's not smart. It just means he doesn't have that education. He's studied finances, and he didn't study English, and he didn't study science, and he hasn't been in construction, so he really doesn't know much about the construction industry. And so he calls me and asks me, what's this mean and what are we going to do about it? And that's okay. And then he argues with me, but I guess that's part of democracy, huh? You got to argue.
It's healthy when we're fighting with each other, generally speaking.
Not with my wife. No,
well,
you can end up with one crushed testicle.
Well, sure, but to the larger point, though, I think that I would say this, and you could agree or disagree. I would say that most folks that are operating at the upper echelon of intellectual heft, people that really know a lot of things about a given field, or just general knowledge, there tends to be an acknowledgement that even at their level of knowledge, there's a whole lot that they don't know because they've learned so much that they realize that the universe of total knowledge is way beyond what they can even know. So there's a respect for the information. There's a respect for, hey, this is a really, really complicated subject matter, whatever it is we're talking about. I know what I know. I can tell you what I know, but I'm not going to try to tell you that I know everything because most people that are super duper educated and smart in that way know that there's a whole lot that they don't know. There's kind of the Rumsfeldian, you not knowing what you don't know is the biggest problem. And this gets to your folks, your attention on the media. A lot of these people, and I'm not, pointing fingers at anybody in specifically, when your job is to try to sensationalize something, and you're talking about, if that is what you're trying to do, and you're talking about these complex things, there is a sort of lack of respect, whether it's intended or not, for the just volume of information that exists, that they don't even have any comprehension of it even existing. They have a sphere that they are within. They know a little bit about something. And so they'll hammer that, and they'll hammer that in, any sort of fantastical ways. But as far like nuclear energy being, a great example of that, there's a lot of histrionics about that, but there's not really a whole lot of knowledge being passed on a lot about that because they just don't know anything about it because they haven't taken the time to learn. And they think that, and I'm being very general and broad brush here, but they think that they know enough to be able to speak about it in an articulate fashion and in an erudite way, when in reality, if they really did, they wouldn't be speaking about it as stridently as he is. I don't know if I communicated that very well, thus proving the point that I'm making here, I think.
Well, I think that people function at an emotional level a lot of the time, and that makes it difficult to let their intellect do the heavy lifting for them. And that's what I was saying about the difference between the heart and the brain. You can have really good, positive, well-meaning emotions, but if they don't translate into something that is intellectually, scientifically, situationally proven to work, well, it really doesn't do you a whole lot of good now, does it?
That's the difference between being a theorist and a practitioner, so I've heard.
Well, something like that, but I mean, we need the theorists, but usually the theories need to be based on some science. So it's like polymyalgia rheumatica. We know that it's an autoimmune phenomena, but we don't know what triggers it. So then we have to start the investigation into it, and we can speculate and say, well, it's probably a virus, there may be a genetic predisposition, but we need these certain elements, but we haven't proven that yet. So it takes time and it takes investigation, but I think we need an intellectual, scientific basis to start the inquiry into cause and effect, and that therein lies the problem. And I heard one woman say, "Oh, nuclear war, will all be dead." No, we won't. We won't all be dead. It'll be devastating, but we'll survive as a species. How well we do after that's another question, but we'll survive it. But how many people have died from nuclear accidents at power plants? Oh my gosh, it's minuscule. It is minuscule. I think at Chernobyl, as I've said before, 54 people died from the radiation, and they were all the workers and the firemen who went out to put out the fire to try to keep the thing from blowing out more steam that had radioactivity into the atmosphere. And at Fukushima, I think one person died, and he died from a heart attack, or he got swept away by the tsunami. But it's really a very minuscule number of people that have been injured by nuclear energy. You go to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and you're talking maybe a couple 100,000 people. There's 8 billion people on the planet, for God's sakes. 8 billion. 8 billion. What percentage of 8 billion is a couple 100,000? And back at that time, there was probably 3 or 4 billion at the most. But even then, that's a very small amount of the population. And so you have to put this into perspective, and it's difficult for people to do, because the first thing they're going to say was, well, what if it was your cousins that were killed at Hiroshima or Nagasaki?
Right.
Well, it's, as a doctor, I can step back and say, well, this is just part of life. We come and we go. But most people can't do that, especially in an era where you don't deal with and see death on a daily basis like you did 200 years ago, where you lost a sibling, where the infant mortality rate was 20%, and kids played with death dolls and they played with coffins, and those were part of their toys. And now if you did that, oh my God, the women would go nuts. They'd be in Congress yelling and screaming to get these things off the market. But death is part of life. I mean, there's not much we can do about it, Joe. But you know what we can do?
What's that?
We can get ready for the end of the show, because we're at 9:59 here, so we better say goodbye. And I'm Dr. Bill, your radio MD, and you tell me how much time. Give me a countdown here, bud.
Oh, you're at about 45 seconds.
All right, so we got time to say 727-384-6411, 727-384-6411. We are a full-service medical clinic. We got x-ray, we got lab draws, we have in-office little testing, and we have ultrasound and echocardiograms and peripheral vascular testing and all kinds of stuff, and we're there for you. So we are at 6399 38th Avenue North in St. Petersburg, Florida, 727-384-6411, 727-384-6411.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
So I was